Today's speaker is the Chief Hacking Officer, Robert Stauss. He is a United States Army trained security expert and ethical hacker, and we had a long discussion about ethical hacking, so hopefully he'll get into this with everyone. His fascination with hacking computers and telecommunications began in the late 1980s when his grandfather, who was a telecommunications engineer and executive for AT&T and the Bell system, taught him about phone phreaking. A form of phone hacking and exploration of the phone system. Stauss was hooked and became an avid phone phreaker before the age of 10, building his first blue box in 1988 at the age of 7. And something just doesn't sound right with that, phreaking at age 7, I don't know. He has written and lectured on the practice and the mitigation of social engineering-based cyber attacks, and he's going to tell us about cyber techniques designed to inform and increase our security awareness. He also shared that his team has been successful, 100% successful, in hacking into the systems of all the clients that have retained their services. Wow, that's scary. We look forward to your presentation, Robert, and we have made a contribution to the Rotary International Polio Plus Fund as a way to say thanks for speaking to us today. Today's program is being recorded, so please wait for an audience microphone should time permit questions. And please also, before you ask your question, pay attention to the time because I don't like to cut people off, but I will. Thank you and welcome, Robert.
Thank you, President Donna. I'm going to do my best to actually stay at the podium. Camera guy, I'm sorry in advance. So how is everyone today? Good. Well, it's great to be here. So one of the first things that I'm going to talk about is one of the things that I love doing, and that's breaking into a building. So, which is not something that most people think about, right? They think about how to secure their IT infrastructure, right? But they don't think about securing their building or their suite. So, how many people, you can raise your hands, how many people use a card like this to get into your buildings or your suite? So quite a few. How many use keys? Still quite a bit, okay. There's a company, so in North America right now, card access like this has about a 90% market share. And the dominant global provider of this technology is a company called HID. And HID has different technologies, and they have cards exactly like this. What's on these cards? Two things. The first thing that's on here, both things that are on this card are a series of numbers. One is a site ID, which matches up to the HID card readers that you scan when you go into a building or you go into your office suite. The other is a card ID, which identifies this card. So, for example, you get a new job and your employer says, here's your new card. They're going to type that card information into their data infrastructure and their terminals so that, one, they know who's going in and out of the building at any given time, and they can put restrictions on the card. Say, this person is only able to get into the building from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So how do we get into a building? We have a device like this called a proxmark. This is a proxmark 3. Very quickly, I'll show you how this works. So this is the proxmark. This is an antenna. This is a battery pack. And we arm this. Now, if I'm walking around and I want to introduce myself to someone, I'm not going to go, hi, I'm Robert. You know, you're going to be like, what is that? Get that thing away from me. So what do? We put this inside a laptop sleeve, like an in-case, laptop pouch. And we can, we had one company that hired us to see if we could get into their secured floor. It's a financial services company. And we got to their floor, and we found that their entire floor was secured. They had, you get off the elevator, and to the left there's a secured suite, and you go to the right, and there's a secured suite. The only space that's not secured are the bathrooms. So what do? We take this proxmark, put it in a laptop sleeve, go into the restroom, and stand in a urinal stall and wait for someone from one of those two suites to walk in, use the urinal next to me, and while they're busy doing something else, I'm taking the credentials from their card that's either in their wallet or hanging from their belt or anywhere else. And that's how we're able to let ourselves, after hours, we can essentially become them. And once this is in play mode, this antenna becomes this card. Not too long ago, one of the executives of a local, I won't use their name, but a local commercial real estate developer was giving me a tour of one of their buildings. And he didn't believe that I could, as easily as I said I could, steal the credentials from his card. So we were in the basement of one of his buildings, and it's like challenge accepted, right? So I got the credentials to his master proximity card. What was the nearest secured location in that building? It was their gym. And I used this device to let myself in. Since I had his master card, I could have let myself into any building and any suite within that building throughout their entire portfolio. So this device is a simple Proxmark 3. Anybody can buy this for about $400. We are currently working on two customized versions of this. One is, so with this device, I have to be about 2 to 3 inches away from a target. With a device that we're currently working on, it has an expanded antenna that requires us to be about 2 feet away from a target. So what can I do with that? I can throw that into a backpack, go into a target, maybe a Rotary meeting, walk around and steal everyone's credentials who has a proximity card. Now that device, unlike this one that I have, will both have an SD card, so I can actually store all of these credentials, and it will have Bluetooth technology, so I can actually send those credentials to my phone. Right now, in order to be able to clone a card, there's software that we have that we can use to actually clone cards. Another device that we have an engineer working on us with is a card that is a Proxmark that has another system within it that actually allows us to be able to clone a card on the fly. So recently, I was trying to get into a target, and using a social engineering attack. Who here knows what social engineering is? Anybody? So a lot of you, that's good. So social engineering is using deception, manipulation, and influence to get a human target to respond to the request of an attacker. And so trying to get into a target, we were able to social engineer their landlord, right? So we wanted information from the landlord. So we would go in with a nice suit under the pretext of looking for an office suite. And so they would show us around to the different suites, and we would say, we would negotiate price per square footage. So you're advertising $32 a square foot. Can we get that down to 30? Can we get it down to 28? Asking them questions to get their minds off of security, right? So, and I said, we have about 50 employees. How many keys do we get? And he said, sir, we don't give you keys. We give you a card like this. And I said, oh, that's so cool. I've never seen one of those before. I've heard about them, but I've never actually seen one. Can I see that? And she hands it to me, and I went, oh, that's so cool. There you go. And I had her card credentials. So that's one of several ways that we actually get into the breach the physical security of a target. Why is that important? Well, if we can breach a target's physical security, we can breach their IT. So all IT can be compromised. And by the way, I hope most everyone in here actually locks their workstation. I see a couple people going, but even if your workstation is locked, we can still get in using something called direct memory access attack. So we're spraying computer instructions onto even a locked computer. If you receive an email containing, let's say, a PDF file, do you open those? Probably. And what are the things that you're looking for to decide whether or not you're going to open that document? Well, first of all, you're going to probably rely on your what we call PSP, or personal security products, your antivirus software, your anti-malware software, to screen that and tell you whether it's okay or not, right? Well, as an attacker, we have the ability to bypass any personal security products. So any antivirus software, we have a way of bypassing that. And we do that by doing injecting our code over memory only and not on disk, not on your hard drive. When you have a workstation that's locked, we can get in. And what are we able to do? We're able to extract, if you have any passwords or any information that's saved on your browser. So, Safari or Internet Explorer or Chrome, Firefox, we can extract all of that data. If you save your username for your financial institution, we can extract all of that. There is and many of you have gotten a lot better with things like this, but how many of you use a device like this, called a USB stick or a flash drive, something? A really brilliant security researcher out of Berlin, Germany, by the name of Karsten Nohl, introduced not too long ago an attack called a bad USB attack, where we are able to actually exploit a vulnerability in the controller firmware. So we can actually turn this device into an HID device to act as a keyboard to inject keystrokes to actually drop a malware payload. Now, many people have gotten wise to these things and have actually, some people actually turn off the power essentially to their USB ports. But a lot of people have just become more security aware about plugging these in, right? So once an attacker has the malware from this device onto your keyboard, it's game over. We can essentially become you, and we can take anything off of your computer. We can put anything onto it, right? So one of the cool things that we love to do is we can, if you have a laptop, what are two things that every laptop or almost every laptop has? A microphone and a webcam. So what we can do is, besides the inserting and bringing back passwords that you might have stored, we can actually turn your laptop into a room bug, because we can control your microphone. We can also control your webcam, which is wonderfully fun because we can actually see the person that we hacked, right? So how do we get someone to plug one of these in? One of our favorite ways is we actually go onto a company's social media or their LinkedIn, their website, and we'll actually download their logo and put it onto a label. And we'll write in red, we'll write, extremely proprietary and confidential payroll and salary history information, fourth quarter 2017. Print that out, put it on the device and leave it tomorrow. I promise you, someone will plug this in. So one way that we're able to extract personal information is through attacks like that. Being able to get at your personal information is essential to an attacker. Lots can be done with them. And for another demo that I'm going to do, I need a volunteer. I need a volunteer from the audience. Come on up.
You have all of my information anyhow.
What's your name, sir?
I'm not going to tell you. You tell me.
Okay.
If he cannot read this one, information.
You'll be sorry you're picking on me. It's clear your browsing history now.
You can feel free to come on stage.
Okay.
And I'm going to see what information that I can find out about you in about 60 seconds.
Wonderful.
So are you okay if whatever information we find goes on the screen?
Not social security. Find other things. Because this is going to be on the webcam, yeah? It's going to be on the public.
Well, yes. Now, I'm your friend.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of these people are your friend, but
I know Moses is not, but
Social engineering you right now.
yes. I'm timing you.
now. So while we're doing this, we'll search by your, and you live in Wisconsin?
I guess so.
I'll assume so. So let's see, we have You're right, it is. Thank you, whoever that was.
Yes. My name is Moses Altic.
So we'll see how much information we can get on you. Now, are you, were you, is your birthday 1954?
Yes.
I won't say the whole thing, but is the last word?
No, that's wrong.
So we'll, all right, you can go ahead and take that off the screen. But that is,
And then block it later on for the public.
so thank you. Give him a round of applause. So why is getting that information essential? And, there's other ways that we have to actually doing a profile based on other information that we get from the same database, and we can actually get your mother's maiden name. But once an attacker has a target's social security number, name, and date of birth, it's game over. And if we have your mother's maiden name, which, if anybody opens a new bank account or a new credit card, anything, most financial institutions are going to ask you for your mother's maiden name. And how many have had that done? Yeah, almost all of you. So the reason why they do that is because they have their own database and they can see that identifying information. And that's how they verify you. That's how they verify your identity. So let's say we all know Equifax breach, but let's say, we have a flag or a block put up with one of the 3 credit bureaus. If I have all of your information, including your mother's maiden name and every address that you've ever lived, there's a pretty long list on this database. Your social security number, I can ask any answer any identifying questions that I'm asked. I can essentially become you and remove any blocks or holds or alerts that you have on your accounts. And so that's how an attacker would get at your bank accounts, your business records, financial records, real estate, DMV records, which was a big thing for me back in the 90s. I loved getting into the DMV database. I once had a car cut me off on the freeway, and because of contacts that I had using social engineering with the DMV, I was able to get their cell phone number, and I called them. And to this day, some guy is probably wondering how some guy on the freeway was able to get his cell phone number. So with that, there's many more demos that I can show, but since we're pressed for time, I'm going to wrap up there. And if you guys have any questions, I'd feel free to take them. Happy to take them. Thank you.
I've read recently about shutting down your credit report. Is that helpful?
To some degree, it can be, but like I said, there's really no way to shut down completely your credit report, right? There are restrictions and other flags and other alerts that you can put on your credit reports. But like we just demonstrated, if I have all of your identifying information, I actually have the ability to go back and pose as you and take whatever information or whatever alerts or blocks that you've put on, and I can remove them. So it's really essential that you are very vigilant about looking at not only your financial accounts, but also your credit reports and everything else. And if you see anything that's unusual, right away. I will tell you that one of the things that I do personally and I recommend is I have a alert on both my credit card and my debit cards and bank and checking accounts, so that if there's a transaction over $20, I get an email alert and a text alert. So what does that do? I know that's a pretty small number, but what does that do? One, if someone is taking $100 out of my account, I know about it right away. But if I'm pumping gas and I pump $50 worth of gas in my car and I know I should be getting an alert and I don't, that also means that something's going on with my account and I should look into it right away. So that's kind of a double-edged sword in how you can really go about sort of protecting that information and staying vigilant with it.
I'm over here. I'd like to know how we protect ourselves from you.
So what we do at Bertelsmann is really simulate real-world attacks. The type of attacks that we do are the same type of attacks that the real bad hackers, the bad guys out there, are doing as well. And it's really essential. A lot of people, passwords is one big area where there's a lot of vulnerabilities. So making sure that your passwords are changed and updated, and not using dictionary words and that sort of thing. That's easily crackable. There's a lot of software out there that are password management tools that are really good. They're open source, they're free, and they can actually create passwords for you and will essentially create a master password, so that if you're ever locked out of an account, you can use that master password. So there's a lot of keeping your desktop, your web applications up to date. Every time that there's a update that's pushed out, a lot of those are security oriented, or at least have some sort of security updates that are included in those. So it's very important that when you have an update that's pushed out, update it right away. And a lot of attacks, by the way, happen because the security updates were never done. And by the way, that has a lot to do with what was behind the Equifax attack.
You're scary, and I'm glad you exist. Two quick questions. One is how vulnerable are our cell phones? And two, Discover Card is advertising that if you turn your social security number into them, they will check thousands of different websites to make sure that your social security number isn't showing up on their website. How secure is that, and is that something that we should consider doing?
Well, I'll answer the second question first. Discover, they're a reputable company, but, as we've seen from a lot of places, Target being one of them, Anthem being another one, every company that has your data it's not a foolproof solution. So it's a good tool, and it's a good method of using to try and track some of the information that's out there using your information, but it's not a silver bullet. So I don't say not to use those services, but I wouldn't leave that in their hands and trust them to maintain it. Cell phones. Cell phones are also fun for us. So one of the another demo that we love doing but didn't have a chance to do tonight is spoofing. So we can do both SMS spoofing and outgoing calls spoofing. So I can have President Donna and Brian Chan there if I'm using the software device that I have. I can actually call President Donna and make it look like Brian is calling her. And the same with sending a text message. How is that useful? If does anybody here have a assistant or a? Okay, so see, no one's going to give me any more information because they. So what that is good for is, I can text, somebody's assistant, and it would show up as that executive, and it'll say, when Robert calls, go ahead and release the third quarter financials, and by the way, don't call or text me because I'll be on the golf course or whatever. What are the chances that assistant is going to comply? 99.9%. And so that is one of several vulnerabilities with cell phones and even landline phones.
Thank you. Very interesting. Can you tell us about what you've described today as criminal behavior and what's not criminal behavior, and what it is that we might need to do for laws to be enacted that might, if ever, dissuade anybody from doing what you've described?
I was not long ago telling my mother about, so I was a black hat. So black hat, bad hacker, white hat, good hacker for anyone who would want the terminology. I was a black hat for many years, and I was, I got in some trouble in the late 90s for it. And I was telling my mom recently about a couple of exploits that we were doing for a client. And she said, what is the difference between what you're doing now and what you were doing years ago that got you in trouble? The difference is authorization. So now when companies hire us to test their security controls, I'm still hacking every day, which is great, right? But with authorization. And so that's the difference between whether there's legal hacking or illegal hacking. So what can companies do to try and prevent that? A couple of things. What we always say, by the way, is that companies can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, often millions of dollars, on intrusion detection systems, firewalls, other security hardware and software. But if an attacker can find one trusted person within your organization and that person complies, then all the money that you've spent on security technology is essentially wasted. So not only is it essential that you are vigilant with your security technologies, but it's also training your people. And what we find far too often is that a company will train their people once, and then 5 years later they've never done anything else. And it's the type of training, and the training has to be so that it doesn't reduce employee morale. And test your people. So we'll have a company do a simulated phishing attack, spear phishing attack. By the way, when we do those, about 30% of a company's employees comply. And so what we tell people is to turn those into teachable moments. And so use that training and keep doing it annually, even every 6 months, to keep up that security awareness.
So my question is, there are many women who, after they get married, they hyphenate their last name.
Yes.
Their middle name becomes their last name.
Yes.
So since the security question default is often mother's maiden name, what do you suggest for women or people who maintain their maiden name?
It's interesting. Using the database that I just used not too long ago, I did a demo for a lady who, she said, I really don't care if you find my social security number. I've been married 3 times before, and I'll be really impressed if you can find all my previous last names. Took about 25 seconds. So, because you have a very long history, and all of those names, so you can change your name, you can't change your date of birth, and you can't change your social security number. And so any other name that you've had are always tied to those things. So when I do a check on your social security number, it's going to tell me every other name that you've used. So to answer your question, it's really difficult. It's really difficult because in the United States, and by the way, we have some of the worst data privacy laws out there in the world. And we're sort of ingrained and embedded in how we track people and how we verify their information. It's unfortunate that using a person's or mother's maiden name is just kind of one of those default security questions that a financial institution, for example, will ask. But there's not really anything we can do about that. What we can do instead is be very vigilant in looking at our information, looking at our credit reports, looking at our bank statements and everything else, just making sure that everything on there is tracking, and there's nothing out there that's sort of an anomaly for our everyday use. So with that, I thank you.
Well, I'm lucky because no one wants my information. Thank you, Robert. With that, we are adjourned.